I fly frequently. That's besides the point. A lot of people do that. But look at the hassle about going and catching a flight. I have to go rush through a city traffic, go to an airport that is actually far out of the city. I enter it and I just get there just in time. I then enter a palatial building that looks like a museum and a mall combined. I have no time for all of that because the security check lines are very long. And these days they are actually asking us to remove a lot of things. And going through all these, I have no time further to even put them back in place. I carry my belt, bag, laptop, shoes, everything in my hands, and then run to a gate that is very far away. I get my weekly exercise doing airports. That was not how it was supposed to be. What is the alternative? How about this? I hail a plane with a mobile app. It shows up in front of my house doorstep at an appointed time. And I get in there, and I go to the city that I want to, and get down at the doorstep that I want to over there. No airports, no security check, nothing, period. Can this happen? Cut. Let's get to this scene that we have right here. An auditorium, lights, air conditioning. Where are we getting all this electricity from? Maybe from a distant thermal power plant that is belching out smoke, transmitting the power all the way through very long transmission lines. When you step out to get water, you have a huge pipe network that is delivering water, treated water to you from distant reservoirs and rivers. You put out your garbage, hopefully in the dustbin, and it gets collected to go to distant landfills. You come in by vehicles that are using fuel that was delivered to you with a huge distribution network from a large refinery, which in turn got its crude oil from large oil tankers and oil pipelines from abroad. And you take all these things for granted. It's as if, like, for you to actually come and sit here and listen to me, so many other things had to happen. That is so 20th century. In 20th century, people were basically doing all these big things. Big airports, big planes, big, large thermal power plants, huge transmission lines, and so on and so forth. And that is what we actually call as infrastructure. By definition, infrastructure is huge, massive. It takes a lot of money and it takes a lot of time to set in. And the developed countries went through all of these things. If you're a developing country and you have to reach all these things to the last village, stuff that we actually take for granted in our cities, we would be developing forever. It's as if, like, the agenda was set by them and we are following the course. We are a loser to start with, right? So there must be a shortcut to this. I would like to fundamentally question the need for massive infrastructure in order for us to develop. We should be able to make very smart technology that is indeed so smart it requires a lot of deep tech, even rocket science, so that we will make small products that are affordable by individual people or small groups of people, like people in apartment complexes and in urban areas, suburban areas, or village communities in rural areas, so that it can be distributed all over, it can be grown in a modular way, and much more importantly, people can actually take decisions about what technology they want to adopt. Because you need to actually make responsible choices. If you were to actually get the power required for this auditorium by yourself, would you actually put a thermal power plant that is burning coal outside the window here? Or would you actually be putting solar panels? So the responsibility of doing cleaner tech comes in when you allow people to choose the technology. We are a democracy. We need to democratize technology. How about a village panchayat deciding to launch a small rocket so that they can put a microsatellite that monitors their own crops? That's what I call defrastructure. Defrastructure is already happening. Mobile phones are the best example. When you had to have landlines, you had to run copper cables up to each home, and that is not sustainable at all. With mobile phones, the customer is actually doing part of the bargain by having phones that have so much choice for you. The service provider is only putting cell phone towers. Uberization is already making parking lots obsolete, and you don't even have to actually go on building parking decks. Electric vehicles are reducing part counts of automobiles by a factor of 100, so they would actually become cheaper when the battery prices come down and will be a lot more affordable for transportation. Rooftop solar is a choice that people can make in producing their own electricity in a clean manner. With 5G and AI coming up, all these things are actually pretty useful to do in the communication, information, and electrification spaces. But what about mechanical engineering hardware, like transportation, like energy? How about trains, planes, and rockets? Is it possible for us to actually miniaturize all of these and distribute them? That's what we purport to do at the National Center for Combustion Research and Development at IIT Madras, which is fast turning out to be a deep tech startup hub. We have the ePlane company that makes electric planes besides drones and hybrid aerial vehicles, Agnikul that makes mini launch vehicles, Aerostrovilos that makes micro gas turbines, X2 Fuels that makes crude oil from waste, and more. Let's start with energy. We innovated a combustion technology called distributed combustion, with which you could take all kinds of fuel and burn them cleanly with pollutant emittents at levels that are a tenth to a hundredth of norms that are even yet to kick in. With this kind of combustion, we could make micro gas turbines that are going to be so compact when compared to conventional diesel gensets that could occupy an entire stage like this or even bigger. And all that stuff is possible because of metal 3D printing. 3D printing is now becoming a level playing field for catching up and beating the developed world from being a developing world, so long as you can actually make them small enough. And I told you that we can take any kind of fuel. Where are we going to get the fuel? The fuel can be sourced locally by using waste, and here again, it's any kind of waste. It can be unsegregated municipal solid waste or agri-waste. We take all these wastes and convert them into crude, blend them together, and distill it so that we can use it in a fuel-agnostic engine like the one that I mentioned before. So that's the crux. If we are smart engineers and technologists, we have to actually make engines that can take any fuel and not force you to use a petrol engine or a diesel engine and get petrol and diesel supplied in different trucks and so on to petrol bunks and so on. And we should be able to handle waste in an unsegregated manner in much smarter ways and not force you to do this. That's defrastructure again. And this will essentially put these thermal power plants, huge transmission lines, oil tankers, huge long oil pipes, and refineries obsolete. 3D printing can also allow us to make modular rockets, and they can be made small enough, but can go to space taking microsatellites. And microsatellites are actually emerging as an alternative if they are launched as a constellation when compared to large satellites, so that you have better revisit times to locate farms and any other assets that you want to monitor and the progress of. And this, with these kinds of launch vehicles, we can launch anytime, anywhere, and affordably. You don't need to have large launch pads. We can actually launch them from trucks. Precision farming is already happening, and drones can now do pesticide spraying, right? This is actually a vast difference from dumping a lot of pesticide using piloted aircraft over large tracts of land that people do in the West. In India, we don't have large tracts of land. It's all about small farms. So we need to come up with an ingenious technology with which we can handle this situation. Hybrid aerial vehicles are what we are coming up with. These are hybrid electric planes, which are looking like drones looking from the bottom, but looking like planes looking from the top. They can go long distances at the same time. They can also take off and land vertically. which means I can actually use it as a drone over a small piece of land to do spraying and make it look like an aircraft taking flight from one piece of land to another that is far away. That is tailoring our tech to the current situation. If this can actually go far away, you can use these for organ transport across hospitals that are far apart in a city without having to go through a green corridor which stops all the traffic with elaborate arrangements and a large infrastructure for the ambulances to fly past. If we can save lives, we can also kill, in defense, of course. So you can get all these small hybrid aerial vehicles to form a formation of swarm and do an airstrike, or even if they are not a formation, the distributed airstrike can be as lethal as a fighter aircraft that we usually import with large money and put a fighter pilot's life at risk. And similarly, we wouldn't really want to use ballistic missiles. So the world is actually going to get differentiated between the haves and the have-nots. ePlanes are going to do to aviation what EVs are doing to automobiles. They will make it affordable for you to fly short distances. So these are like mini buses that can actually take off from very short runways. So if I want to actually go from Trichy to Pudukkottai, I can actually do this in about 10 minutes. Why will I land in Pudukkottai? There is no airport. There is no runway. Never mind. You give me a playground worth of space, we can construct a circular runway for these kinds of small aircraft to land and take off. That's the kind of versatility we can achieve with these. In congested spaces like urban areas, we can have vertical takeoff and landing machines that are already coming up in Dubai and Singapore and will populate our skylines within a decade as expected. So which essentially means we say goodbye to traffic. Where else we would have the situation where we end up spending more time in cars than if we were to walk. All of that will be a thing of the past. What about not going to the airport anymore? Fasten your seatbelts, ladies and gentlemen. When I now step out of my doorstep and get onto the plane at an appointed hour, I'm actually trying to synchronize with a lot of other aircraft that are taking off around the same time to go to a particular city. And they all take off and go towards the edge of the city where another aircraft that is fairly large would take off from what would be an airport that once we used to go to and nobody else goes to now. And then this aircraft will now be rendezvousing with us and we do mid-air recharging all the while when we go to the next city. As we go to the next city, we now peel off this formation and go to our respective doorsteps. What did I tell you? No airports, no security check, nothing. And this is what I call as ubiquitous flying. You can fly across a city, go to the suburbs and the nearby towns, and you can also go between cities, all flying all the time, which essentially means fancy highways and very huge metro networks actually can become redundant. This is basically all coming up from a synthesis of ideas that occurred over time. It's not as if like this happened overnight. We wanted to put our innovative technologies that we were developing in the lab into useful products. And that's how the startups came up. But as startups, we can't compete with big companies that are making engines, planes, and making oil the way they do right now. So we have to do things at a small scale. So when we have to do things that are smaller products, we have to see how we can find use cases for these. And if we have to make impact, we have to now push them at much larger numbers. That is where we said we are redefining what is called as large scale. Large scale in the 20th century used to be doing things big. In the 21st century, it's all about doing a large number of small things. Small is beautiful is what E.F. Schumacher said, and that was in the 20th century. In the 21st century, we can't afford to just stay small, but we have to actually indeed stay small, but pretty smart as well. So we are all about making small, smart, networked tech, and that's what defrastructure is all about. And we will democratize technology. Thank you.